It's really nice to be back here and speak to real faces. I do so much online that it's good to see people from below the neck. And see all of you in your Sunday best shorts. I want to thank Roger and Brigid for inviting me back. And it's kind of a form of grace to be looking at real faces and seeing human beings we forget in this digital age. And also nice to see you've added a brass section since I've been back. And I want to thank Roger for choosing that invocation from the Upanishads, which just happens to be what I was going to read and will at the beginning of our workshop this afternoon without the Sanskrit. For some reason, grace was on my mind when I was invited, and I said, let's talk about grace, and it keeps coming up. And I began noticing how many different ways we use the term in English language. There's when we say we talk about an elegant person moving with grace. We talk about somebody having the good grace to do something courteous or thoughtful or to admit a mistake. We say that somebody graces the room with their presence. We say that you have a grace period in paying back a loan. In England, they call certain people your grace. In churches, they do the same. But in spiritual and religious circles, of course, it has a certain kind of meaning, and it's usually it is defined as the free, unearned, undeserved favor of God, and it comes in different forms. But the usual connotation is it's not something planned, and in the West, in their typical conception of God, it's something given, something granted to us. Amazing grace, was blind, now I see. Something changes, some gift has come, maybe alleviation of guilt and shame in some form of sort of feeling of forgiveness or divine love, or a moment of a revelation or insight. And people use it in different ways. For example, I heard recently of a priest in a local rural pastor situation in a parish. And he's young and he's new, and he gets to and from church on his bicycle. And one day his bicycle is gone, and he suspects it was stolen. But he needs his bike, and he goes to the senior priest and says, I don't know what to do. It's how I get to and from the parish every day. And the priest says, I have an idea, since you suspect it was stolen. You do the sermon on Sunday and do it on the 10 Commandments. And when you get to thou shalt not steal, look at the faces in the pews. Look at the people you suspect and see if there's any change, and then you'll know. So Monday comes around, and the senior priest says, I see you have your bicycle back. It must have worked. He said, no, it was grace. It was God's grace. He said, I got to thou shalt not steal, and nothing happened. I didn't see anything in the room, and I started to feel down and panic. But then by God's grace, when I got to thou shalt not commit adultery, I remembered where I left my bike. So, God's grace. By the grace of God, I was able to adapt that joke to this moment. But the point being that we don't earn grace. It's in a sense something given to us. But that begs a lot of questions, theological questions about Western religion, because it evokes this sort of generous uncle who, says, oh, look, I got you a toy, or surprise, there's a check in the mail. Or if you're old enough, you may remember a TV show called The Millionaire, where the anonymous, secretive rich man writes a check for $1 million in every episode, and it's given to a needy person, and complications ensue. Grace is like, that's the image of God, but it sort of begs the question, if that's true, how are these choices made? Is this some kind of wheel of fortune thing, and or a cosmic lottery, or God opens the phone book and says, grace for you, or Oprah, you get grace, you get grace, you get grace. But one of the interesting things is that in the East, where they have a very different conception of these things, of the nature of the divine, they use the word grace, or at least it's often translated that way by whoever does the English translations of saints and the Eastern sages' writings and all that. They'll use the word grace, but it's meant in a kind of different way. Not just in the East, but by the mystics. The Western mystics, the Christian mystics, the Jewish mystics, the Sufis. It's more like what you are used to hearing here. And that's not a coincidence, because I happen to know Charles and Myrtle Fillmore read the Upanishads and other Eastern texts. Somebody I interviewed recently on my podcast, who's written a book with grace in the title, defined it as, grace is the direct experience of divine presence coming alive from within you. So it's a gift, but it's not like, an Amazon delivery that you didn't expect. It's not coming from outside. It's something that arises from within us. And in people's experience, it feels like something happened to them. And so it's attributed to a God figure. Thank you. Because you want to thank somebody. And you can thank yourself for allowing it to arise. But we like to give form to the divine mystery of things. So it's understandable it should come that way. But it's more helpful to think of grace as something arising from within that is always present, it is always available, if we're open to it. And we can't predict it, we can't make it happen, We can't schedule it on our Google Calendar and have a reminder. You can't coerce it. It's like, it's unpredictable. It's spontaneous. It's an arising. It's like we can't make ourselves fall asleep. We can't coerce, we can't make ourselves fall in love. These things happen. We fall into it, right? That's why we say we fall asleep. We fall in love. You know, a single person who longs for a mate can't say, well, I'm going to go to a bar tonight and fall in love. You know, it just doesn't happen that way. And any sleep expert will tell you if you are tired, you have to just let sleep come. You invite it. You do things to make it more likely to happen. You look your best when you go to the bar. You keep your bedroom quiet and relaxed. You can't, these things aren't to be forced or to be scheduled or coerced. Neither can grace. It comes in different forms. People say, oh, it was grace. They have a vision, they have a realization. And you see it in spiritual biographies all the time, these moments of grace. They're always unexpected. So while you can't make them happen, can you at least encourage it? Can you at least be prepared for it? Can you at least be ready for it? As Shakespeare says in Hamlet, the readiness is all. One of the great saints of India, Sri Ramakrishna, said that grace is like the wind. It's there, but you have to set your sails. You set your sails. What does it mean to set our sails? It's like, divinity has you on robocall. It's going to call you something. It's your turn will come, but you have to be ready for it. You have to have your phone on. You have to be prepared. You have to show up. We put ourselves in position to be open to grace. Whatever it is we do, we come here. We go to walk in the woods. We go play with a child. We listen to certain music. We don't think I'm preparing myself for grace, but that if we do certain things and put ourselves in certain places, we're signaling not to some figure in the heavens, but to ourselves. We're signaling that we're open. We're ready for this. We're prepared. And we know there are certain places and certain situations where grace is more likely to occur. It's more likely to occur when you're walking in the woods and it's quiet and you're listening to the birds than it is in a gym or, some other noisy, smelly place. But not necessarily, because grace, the history of spiritual literature is filled with people who had prison grace and hospital grace and Skid Row grace. These things happen. It can't be predicted. But we're playing with the odds here. We're all gambling. We do the best to improve our odds. And sometimes grace comes in the midst of the most ordinary things. You've probably all heard the famous quote from Brother Lawrence, the Christian monk. Yes? How many? No? Okay. In the noise and clatter of my kitchen, where he worked in the monastery, while several persons are calling for different things, I possess God in as great tranquility as if I were on my knees at the Blessed Sacrament. So this is a kitchen saint. This is Grace doing the dishes. One of the key moments in my own spiritual journey, when I was reading J.D. Salinger as a young reader, not Catcher in the Rye, subsequent word, one of his short stories where a young spiritual prodigy named Teddy, who's the character, name of the character the story is named after, talks about his first spiritual mystical experience was watching his younger sister pour milk into a glass, and he realized all she was doing was pouring God into God. These ordinary moments. It's happened if we're open to it. I recently wrote a Substack that I titled Grace on the Uptown Local, about an experience my wife and I had on the New York subway a few weeks ago. There's no time to tell the whole story, but it had to do with a young woman who happened to be reading Dostoevsky for pleasure, reading Crime and Punishment, this 5-pound, 800-page book, and we started a conversation with her. And we realized, afterward, it stayed with me because she was not only reading Dostoevsky for pleasure, because I asked her if she was a graduate student in literature, but she was studying classical voice. She wants to be an opera singer. And I thought, this is not supposed to be what young people are like now. They're supposed to be buried in their cell phones and being very surly and wanting to be an influencer. And so I counted this as a moment of grace. It was a beautiful experience. And no one has conversations on the subway anymore. But we took a chance and started it up, and it stayed with us. It was a beautiful thing. For some people, they may not call that grace, but I considered it that. So a lot of this is subjective. But the key thing is setting our sails. A guru I once studied with used to say that knowledge is different in different states of consciousness. You could say the same thing about reality. You could say the same thing about grace. Grace comes in if the consciousness is ready for it. I live in the Berkshires. It's beautiful. Just after 40 years in LA, to have to drive somewhere to do a chore and seeing the beautiful hills is still a beautiful experience for me. But it's been 3 years now. So it's less likely to dawn on me how grateful and fortunate I am. It's like, this is the ride to the hardware store. But sometimes I fully appreciate it. Sometimes I take a walk in the woods near my home, and it's sublime, it's divine. Other times, I might as well be on a stationary bike in, a gym somewhere, because what's different? Me. What's different is what I'm bringing to the moment. And that's what we always have to ask ourselves. Someone once said that sitting in church doesn't make you spiritual any more than sitting in a garage makes you a car. It's what you bring to it. you had this beautiful music and the meditation that Roger led and all this. That makes life more conducive to grace. But you all know that there's times when you come here, you might as well have slept in. Other times you come here and you feel something divine and something elevating, something sublime, something sacred, something holy. Same place, basically the same routine. What's different? Something made you more open in those moments. Something made you more ready. So what can we do? A Zen master once said that enlightenment is an accident, but meditation makes you accident prone. You could say the same about grace. It's an accident, it's a gift, it's a phenomenon. But we can open ourselves, we can set our sails, we can make ourselves accident prone. Spiritual practices of all kinds, whether you're inclined to prayer or meditation or mindfulness or sacred music or whatever it is you do, acts of service, they make us accident prone. They raise the odds of grace coming to us. A quiet mind, a trusting attitude, an openness on the subway, in the traffic, at home, God help us, watching the news. An openness. What can we do at this moment, at any moment, to invite grace, not by asking for it and praying for it, but just by opening up, relaxing our cravings and our wanting and our egos, and just being more receptive. Taking a walk, going to Trader Joe's like I will this afternoon. These are everyday moments where if something happens, you say, oh, it's God's grace. But for something made you open to that at that moment. It may have been nothing you did consciously, but we can consciously condition ourselves by habit to be more open. We'll leave it at that because I'm very big on what the yogis call sadhana, regular practice, and anything I can do to encourage that, I want to do. And part of this afternoon's workshop, the Upanishads are all about that, really, when you come down to it. They're treatises, the most sublime treatises on the non-dual eternal presence of the divinity in our lives. But they all point to practice. So anyway, we'll do with that. I hope you can come. I hope all of you will come. I hope you live streaming, you have an hour to get here. So come on down. And we'll make ourselves more ready. We'll set our sails for grace. Thank you for listening. Thank you for laughing at my joke. Thank you all for inviting me back. I hope to see most of you or many of you this afternoon. Blessings to all.